right. So I am going to be continuing off into my timeline, my story, my testimonial, my truth, and where I am coming back into this. This will be part two to the part one. I guess it was kind of the prelude of where I last ended. And we're going to hop over my 2-year healing time after just finishing off with experiencing gang stalking and potentially human trafficking. And I'm going to now go into my physical healing time as well as my spiritual awakening that started to occur simultaneously. Sorry, at the same time, in tandem. So I would like to just start off by saying that when I left my beautifully uninterrupted 2 years of flow state healing, where I was intuitively healing myself and just really fell into flow state. I had been living in a mother-in-law unit connected to a house with a couple that became my family and showed me and gave me hope in humanity with humans once again, after having had experienced such a betrayal and horrendous moment of humans in their lowest and worst. So now this transition was me moving into a space that was still like a mother-in-law unit type of rental, but it was not attached to the house because I still did not feel quite grounded enough to have my own house by myself and feel safe enough yet. I was still trying to build up that safety for myself. And so it was kind of like a little bird getting pushed out of her nest and now trying to still feel comfortable in your own space. And because I had gotten really used to my, adopted family in this place, and I really needed to start feeling comfortable being independent once again, where I had always been my entire lifetime. So this particular place was the start of my spiritual awakening, my physical awakening. Also, I was still releasing a lot of childhood trauma. I was at the beginning stages of that. And so a lot of my relationships that I had in my life for up to 2 years at this point started to deteriorate. And it's very interesting because I now know that I was thinking it was things that I just hadn't done in the releasing of parts of me yet from my lower 3 chakras. But now I know it to be also the spiritual side of things that I was not attending to because I didn't know that I had to at that time. Okay, so the biggest part of this and what started to happen first in this process was when I give you some dates, I move in about the end of the end of July, beginning of August, 2022. Now I'm going to give some information that I did not know at that time, but found out 2 years later, is that my dad ends up transitioning September of 22. I do not know this at the time, but I feel that there is some correlation for things that start to occur on a spiritual level at this time. So just want to mention that now so that you can keep that in mind as I'm telling this part of my timeline and my testimonial and my truth. So things are going great. I feel like I have a pretty good landlord that I'm renting from. And, I had still had my current positions and had really good relationships with everybody up until the point of just moving in. And then about November, a couple of things happen. I have to close up the house due to transition of seasons going from fall to winter. And so we're closing up the house, which is boxing it in if there's anything in the house, foreshadowing. And I also start my class with Wendy DeRosa, which was an intuitive empathic coursework that I was doing to help release lower 3 chakra, low vibrational childhood trauma. And I was also in 2 times a week of EMDR therapy at the time, helping to do this releasing of that work at that time. So it was pretty intense. Things really started to start happening in a way where I was like, whoa, what's happening? And this will be explained here in a minute. But then it was about the end of December that I decided I'm going to also register for a class that was going to help me learn a little bit more about how to start up my soul's purpose business. And she meaning the instructor, Jocelyn Starfather, who has the Sacred Planet website to go to, plus her university. And if that resonates for you, I recommend checking out anybody that I throw shout outs to. However, her goal was to teach us how to start moving forward with trying to put ourselves out there with our soul's purpose business online on social media. And in no way did I think that any of this right now that I am doing with y'all was going to ever happen. In fact, I said in the beginning days of my coursework, no, I will never do this. Because of what I experienced with the con men and the gang stalking, and when they had taken over all my social media accounts and my email accounts and my laptops and my phones and everything, and how they were taking video of me without my knowledge because they had inserted cameras and listening devices within my spaces. Which these are just tactics that I'm mentioning once again to let people know that these are the things that can happen if they start inserting people into your life, where they're pushing out people that and inserting new people in. That's one of the reasons they do that, is to they're their little mules, their pawns, to do their dirty work for them. So I had video of me put out because of their tracking and the people that came in and inserted these cameras and listening devices into my bedroom and potentially could have been in my bathroom. And they were putting videos of me out on the internet where this was not on my permission. I had no idea until I knew that this was happening later on. And obviously not happy about it, because this is nothing. They're making money off of mocking and, putting videos out there of me without my knowledge, which is not okay. So because of that experience, it made me very leery about putting myself back out there again on social media and this and that. However, now that I am in a space where I am, I've risen above that type of vibration, that's something that I'm not paying attention to anymore, because it's not what's important. It's not the important part, because when you learn how to raise above and trying to learn how to align with the highest version of yourself, it's irrelevant. It's a moot point. So I was originally just trying to use that class of Jocelyn's with the creating your soul's purpose business online. I was going to try to use it more in regards to trying to help me figure out ideas about how I was going to take the information that I had gathered up to that point, and how I was, and what my purpose was going to be, working with people, but more on a face-to-face level, right? So that was happening. During that beginning stage, she had, recommended that we make an intentions board. So that was my first year starting my intentions boards, my yearly intentions boards, which I do annually now. And, I was really connecting with my spirit team finally, but not in a way where I was using protections and calling judgments and all this, just doing the daily divinity that we should be doing, that many of us are not trained or understood, in which way to go with that. So a lot was happening at that time. And again, keep in mind now, during that, my dad had transitioned and I had no idea yet at this point because I had not been speaking to my family up to that point for about 8 years, I guess, 7 or 8 years at that point. So, all of a sudden, I kind of start getting a little sick as well by, the end of November. And noticed one of 2 cats had really started to kind of get about as sick as I was. But by January of 2023, me and then one of my cats, we were both just crazy sick, to the point where I started, going into the doctors because I was still had a slight attachment to Western medicine at that time, where I thought that I was supposed to still have my PCP and I was supposed to, go in when things weren't right, because I had only been learning how to mentally heal and mentally release. I was just in such a beginning novice stage of awakening that I guess I definitely did not trust my own abilities and think that I was qualified enough to heal myself. I didn't trust myself in any type of way yet. So, and that's key, right? So me and my cat, we're both getting more and more sick. I am definitely knowing that I'm having to put a lot of attention and finances towards my cat, and then it becomes both my cats, to the point where I was very concerned, upon this initial getting sick, that I was going to have to put them down, at least one of them. And that scared me so much because at that point I had them for 17 years and they were the only living entities, well, besides like 3 past relationships, that I had ever experienced this unconditional love, but for such an extended time, because I never experienced unconditional love within my karmic, toxic, dysfunctional family life growing up. So which again was something I chose to sign into in my soul contract coming into this lifetime, for the purpose of learning inner strength and understanding what it's like to rise from the lowest vibration into the highest vibration of unconditional love, right? So by March 7th, I end up in ER and I'm in a lot of pain in my abdominals and midsection and torso area. And I find out that I have 10 kidney stones, but they're not big enough to zap them with surgery or the laser surgery. So my doctor tells me that I just either, need to figure out a way to let them disintegrate on their own, or I'll just have to live with them. I'm like, no, we're not going to have to live with them. I'll end up figuring out how to take care of them. And this is where I really dive deep into my intuitive, holistic side of my knowledge and my abilities. And so what I would like to do here in this video is talk to you about, because not only did they, find these kidney stones, but I still continue to be sick, as well as my cat. And then cats, they both get sick for sure. The one just got more sick initially, and then the other came along, and we all 3 of us are sick now. And this is we figured out that I'm living in a house riddled with toxic mold, because I end up getting the house tested and, there's signs, and, I ended up figuring out, a lot of different things. The universe was sending me cues here, and like a lot of different, reasons why I needed to get this place checked, beyond just the physical aspect of what I could visually see. There was the heating guy that came in because the heater broke down. And when he told us that, oh my God, your filter was like, ooh, that's crazy about how dirty it was. And I would be concerned there's mold in it. And this was another trigger on top of the mold under the sink, which then in turn, we found out that there was a ton of mold in like behind the walls and under the flooring. And it ended up that there were 3 toxic molds in this house. Dangerous for humans and for the human cells. So, I start diving deep, and I end up luckily finding in my healing community of friends that I had initiated out in this place that I was at in this town, that one of the girls that owned a healing shop, she also had dealt with this and was currently dealing with it. So she ended up being my go-to for questions and resources, and was so helpful. And what happened is that the first step is once you identify that you're getting sick and that you have mold exposure, which is what it's called, is you end up being diagnosed with mold and mycotoxin exposure, that the Western doctors won't identify because they're literally not trained in this area, nor are the Western vets. And so when you try to talk to either a vet or a doctor, human doctor, about mold, they will just look at you like you're a nut job, because they are intentionally not trained in this area for a reason. That is going to be a whole nother video that I'll speak about all of that about in regards to. So what happened is the first step is you have to get out of that space, bottom line, especially when you're initially diagnosed, because your body is sick and will only keep getting more and more sick if you allow yourself. Think about it. If you're in a gas chamber and you stay in a gas chamber, you're going to die at some point. And this is a long, painful death that these kind of mold and mycotoxins will do to a body. And they come up as the doctors will try to put different names on these things, but I'll tell you some of the symptoms that I had. My whole entire GI system broke down. I was getting constipated. My pancreatic enzymes stopped working, so I wasn't digesting food. Therefore, full amounts of whole pieces of food were going into my small intestine, not breaking down, creating what's called SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Now, that is something the Western doctors do know, but again, they just want to go ahead and try to clean that up with antibiotics. So if you go to a functional doctor and they're able to see this inflammation and this mold and mycotoxin exposure in this SIBO, they have holistic health and helpful ways. That will take longer, but it's, regarding detoxing, and the Western doctors will also there is nothing on the Westerns. Let's do this. Here's Western medicine. Here's functional doctor. Here's an immune doctor. I had to go to an immune doctor to be able to have them diagnose me. I wanted to go to a functional doctor, but at the time I did not have enough money, because all my money was getting placed into trying to save my girls, because that's what a good mother does, is they help their babies instead of, kick them while they're down. So the thing that is very important to understand is these will be some of the things that you could experience when you have mold exposure, where you're you could either be constipated or that'll be a main thing, but the gas and the bloating, the inability to, where it feels like maybe you haven't eaten all day, but your stomach feels full, or maybe you can only eat a little bit. Certain foods would aggravate certain things. So you get to a point where you can only allow good. First of all, you have to ensure that you are on a complete organic diet, that your food is clean, that you have good clean water, that is either both reverse osmosis and or has alkaline, some type of alkaline situation occurring with that. If you are doing the reverse osmosis, you do want to be adding certain types of electrolytes. And, this is something I use right now. Sorry, here, let's see. Something I use right now. Personally, there's other great options of, adding in your own minerals to your water. And that's important too. But making sure that your food is clean, because now you're at a place when you have mold and mycotoxin exposure, your toxic cup is overflowing, and you need to do what you can do to try to take your toxicity level in your body and start releasing these toxins. Because in order to put the good in, you have to take the bad out. Kind of like what you're doing when you're emotionally and physically, or emotionally and mentally releasing all this negative. In order to, allow yourself to align with your higher self, you have to release all these negative, low vibrational feelings, emotions that have been built up, pent up from your childhood, if that is something you dealt with in that sense. So, there's a lot that, I want to be able to talk about in this. And so I will get to a point where I do breakdown of the proper ways and what worked for me. For instance, like I have a detox protocol that I ended up being able to figure out only because I had to move 10 times in a time frame of 2 years, because there were that many homes in a dry state. We'll get into understanding all the logistics and the verbiage about that again in later videos. But I wanted to be able to help people identify if you think you could potentially be dealing with mold, because this is one of the things I realized, is that it doesn't matter if you're in a dry state, a wet state, all homes have water, and everything explodes. Dishwashers, washers, right? Just water overflowing because of plumbing's issues. And once that gets into the your wood, the internal wood of the house, you have mold. And unless you get that completely removed, remediation for the most part is crap and won't work unless you find the 1 in a million haystack remediation that's going to do it correctly. And you really have to do your research on that. I've done it in the state that I used to live in, so I know the correct one in that state. But it would be a matter of me having to do the research in each state, because just because they say remediation does not mean that you're getting a correct job done. In fact, more times than not, they're probably just taking your money and leaving you still with remnants of mold that will just now continue to regrow. So this first house has mold, and me and my cats have to get out, and we're sick, and we have to move by myself, which all 10 times I moved all by myself with my cats, each time releasing more and more of my stuff, downsizing more and more. And the beginning part of this is it took me 19 specialists in the Western medicine arena before I was like, okay, I'm getting nowhere. Because it would be like she'd send me to the first specialist, and they were like, we don't see anything wrong, we're going to send you to this specialist. And we don't see anything wrong, we're going to send you to this specialist. And I left one doctor's office crying because he was so mean and rude. And you hear stories about that, and it's true. The doctors decide that, even though they're not qualified to speak on mental health, because they may be an ear, nose, and throat doctor, but they're definitely going to give you their opinion about your mental health. Even though you might already have a therapist or two going on, they still feel that they have their right? So that does exist. And the reason I talk about it like that in a comical way is because you do need to know that it is out there, and it's not you, it's them. Now, one of the things I wanted to make a point on is these doctors, the majority of them, not all of them, but a large majority of them, don't know anything about mold. And the reason is because it's not in their curriculum when they're going through med school, on purpose. And we'll get into that later too. I don't want to dive into that because that's a whole nother subject. But the reason I know this is because one of my friends who I did some pet sitting work for, she was a nurse and then became a nurse practitioner during my time with our friendship out there. And as I was getting sick and diagnosed, she was like, how did they diagnose you for mold exposure? And I was like, what do you mean? How did they diagnose me? Don't you know? Like, you're in the medical. She's like, no, they don't teach us anything about this. So, what ends up occurring is she says, well, as you go along in this process, let me know what, keep me informed. I want to know how you get yourself through this. And so, because up until that point, I kept thinking all these doctors were in on this and they knew, but they were just trying to be jerks about it, And then what I started to recognize and discern was the majority of them, I would say like at least 95% of them, maybe 98, 99, don't have any idea about any of this. They don't even know it exists in the way that somebody who's been through it and has done their own research on it does, or in the way that the top 1% knows about this. So, what I was going to say is that I did, work out something with her that I told her, yes, I will keep you updated and informed on this. But this helped me understand and not be so angry at the medical system, because I kept thinking that they were in on this and, trying to make me feel like shit for no reason. And in reality, they actually didn't know, the majority of them. There was a couple doctors where, like the one that I left his office crying, I'm sure he was probably making some sort of stipend, on the side to do what he did. Because the things that he said were just completely unprofessional and just, I'm sure if I had gone further steps to try to, escalate what he had done, I'm sure it would have somehow transpired into something. But when you're so sick, you only have so much energy in a day. And my energy was about, how can I improve and make myself better and my girls? I don't give a shit about this guy that, thinks he wants to be all in his ego and unawakened. That's his journey. So the reason I speak a little bit more in depth about this part of it is because this does exist. You hear about this stigma, but don't get mad at the Western medical industry and that side of things, because they're purposely not taught about this. Because if they can keep them unaware, then it's easier to keep people quiet, because then they just simply don't know what's going on, right? So okay, so 19 specialists, no shit, you guys, 19 specialists later, I'm like, okay. Actually, before I get to the end of that, I already am starting to dive into figuring out how to get my own functional doctor. And like I mentioned earlier, I was trying to do that, but the testing that you do, which can tell you everything you need to know if you can get these tests done, but they're expensive. And they're obviously not covered under insurance, again, for the same reasons why they don't tell their normal doctors, their Western doctors about it. So I wanted to just finish off this part by saying that if you can find yourself an immune doctor within your state, they can test for inflammation and for mold and mycotoxin, especially Lyme's and all that, which are the basis of most of the diseases that are out there, because inflammation is the base, which toxins create inflammation. And that is what creates all other dis-ease and illness, mental illness within our society. So this immune doctor was the one to diagnose me with what I was called mold and mycotoxin exposure back in 2023. Once I was able to get that diagnosis, and knowing that I could not afford a functional doctor, I realized I had to take this on and start doing the education for myself to try to become a functional doctor for myself, basically. And when I wasn't at work, which was, just a minimal part of my day, I barely had any energy to do anything else, let alone just a nice mindful walk. That's how exhausted I was from how sick I was. And also I wanted to be by my cats to kind of help give them love, to help support them. But nonetheless, I was kind of bedridden for months in the initial stages, as I initially tried to heal and get my body back to a more balanced state. So what I did was during those time periods, I just started researching and studying the shit out of the human body and anatomy and physiology and all of our systems. This is where you really want to study up on the vagus nerve. You want to understand how your gut works. You want to, really start going inward and intuitively feeling like where is it? And this is where I was able to feel intuitively and know certain areas that I needed to put focus on. And then I would manifest certain functional doctors that would then speak to me, giving me free information. So I was in a space, since I didn't have a lot of money at that time, that I was just researching all this free information. And I was, becoming my own functional doctor, basically. And it worked. It was exhausting, and it was, because this was a 24/7. Like, I'd get up and, there was positive affirmations, and there was sound frequency I was working with, and creating a really nice healing Zen space in all the places I had to move of the 10 that I was at. That was key, making sure that you have this beautiful space that is going to foster a healing environment for you that you can feel uplifted and high vibrational in, because that's how you're going to heal. And then putting attention to the areas, drinking lots of water, and then understanding the detox protocol that you may need to do for yourself. But you have to first figure out where the issues are. So some of the issues, like I've mentioned, I was dealing with gut issues and so much pain in my midsection. And then, I started dealing with brain fog and anxiety and panic attacks. So the inflammation, zapped up my vagus nerve and into my brain, and, was just messing up my entire nervous system again as well. And, yeah. So there would be a minute where it was hard for me to even get through speaking one sentence before I'd forget what I was going to say. That's how bad the toxins just take away your short-term memory like that. And so if you're dealing with any of this, you could potentially be dealing with, mold and mycotoxin exposure. At least it's something you could be dealing with. Which, what I was trying to say was, at least 80% of the homes in the United States have this issue, which means 80% of the people in the United States are dealing with this, then potentially, and that could be a low number. So you may be diagnosed with something, but maybe the root cause is toxin exposure. And I'm somebody where it's not, I'm like, I'm going to get to the root cause of everything. That's what you need to do in order to heal. You always need to get to the root. Understand what is the core issue so that you can work from there and release that. Okay, so hold on. So, okay, for the next half an hour, because I'm going to try to keep this in an hour, this one, I'm going to discuss from homes 1 through 10 what I dealt with and what, how I need, because I feel that at least giving a base of what I dealt with during these beginning stages will help, might help somebody see maybe what, if you're questioning like what you have, why you're not feeling good, and I'll be able to give you some signs that I kept, experiencing from house to house, and how I was able to figure it out for myself as well. So, the first mold house, after I got that diagnosis in, it was like late June of 2023 into July, it took me about 5 months that first time to be able to get my health back into check once I figured out what it was I had to do. Me on top of my cats, where I was able, because obviously it's going to be very similar to heal a human body as it is to heal an animal body. You just have to, adjust to the weight and the sizes, obviously. And so one of my cats was dealing with, I was also dealing with lung and vertigo, and I was feeling like woozy, but I was up in elevation at the time, and like where I feel like I was going to pass out. Let me see here. I'm trying to think of other. Yeah, it's very uncomfortable. And so within those first 5 months, like not trying to, I lost like 25 pounds because I couldn't eat. My like I say, my digestive system had stopped. My pancreatic enzymes stopped breaking down my food, and so it made it hard to eat. Pretty much, I was down to eating avocados, apples, and lots of water, coconut water, and I could barely even eat cruciferous vegetables like, the lettuces, because I also had to be careful about oxalates at the time, because I had realized my kidney stones were brought on by high stress levels, and I had to reduce my oxalate levels. And there's so many foods that have medium to high oxalate levels in them. One of which was my favorites is raspberries and spinach. So you have to take out foods that you wouldn't even think you have to take out for certain things. Well, then once you start, getting all that in check, then you get, bone broth. Bone broth was the other thing that I was able to add in, because it allowed me to feel like I was getting some of that like meat when I would crave it, because I couldn't actually eat my grass-fed meat that I would need to eat every so often. And when my body would crave it, I would, make sure that it was a range grass-fed product, but I couldn't, my body wasn't able to digest that meat. So the bone broth was a good substitute. Plus it's really healing for our immune system. So I also started giving this to my cats as well. But this is where I incorporate now supplements like turmeric. Huge, huge, huge. Get it into your diet. But turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, these four, but you need to make sure the black pepper is included in that, because black pepper helps the absorption rate for those herbs by 200 times more. Without that, your body isn't able to really absorb those nutrients. And so it'd be going in, but it wouldn't be doing much for you. So black pepper is important. So I had, found this recipe for what at the time was called a golden goat latte, but it's turmeric, again, ginger, and cinnamon. Cinnamon helps regulate blood sugar. Ginger helps our, stomach and digestive, and turmeric helps with inflammation and so many other things. And then the black pepper helps with absorption. And this was huge on top of the coconut water. I was getting 1 liter of coconut water in a day, plus 2 extra liters at very minimum of pure either osmosis water with adding your electrolyte minerals in, and then I found some good hydrogen water as well as alkaline water. So, I mean, without even being able to think and, without trying to, all of a sudden, every time I'd go into the doctor's office, they were weighing me and I was losing weight. And it wasn't because I was trying to at all. It was because I couldn't eat and I was down to such a bare minimal, and the food I was putting in was good. Granted, I had a little bit of a wiggle room of weight to lose, so it actually brought me down to like my high school weight. But again, that was not the goal. I was just sick. And so when you're sick, you lose weight in that sense. But it had brought me down to a place that I was actually at, a good weight for my height. And so what happened, or so what I did next then is now I'm starting to figure out other supplements to add in and what else I needed to do. So the doctors put me on this medical detox it's really hard on you. It's called like colostramine. And once I started doing my research into the functional doctors and functional medicine, I was actually putting in small amounts of money to get these videos back where I'd have hundreds of doctors speaking for like an hour each on specific areas within our body, and then connecting them all and helping you to understand how to detox your body appropriately, because you can detox too quickly and get what's called, it's called Herxheimer. It's when you try to detox too fast. And if your detox pathways, your liver, your kidney, your skin, are too clogged up and not able to process the toxins out of your body fast enough, toxins get put back into your bloodstream, and then you get sick. And you almost feel more sick, than you were originally feeling. And that's what's called, when you're detoxing, that you're herxing. And the abbreviated is HERX, ING, Herxheimer is, it's what's called when you Herxheimer. And so that did happen a couple of times to me, especially in the beginning stages. But the doctors see like even at immune level, I had to inform them. They didn't even let me know, like, be careful, this could happen. No, luckily it was because of all the research I was doing that I knew that this existed. And then when I recognized it, I was, oh, that's what's happening. When I went back to another doctor's appointment, told her, and she's like, oh yeah, and I was like, good that I'm informing you, right? So, so that's what, then I started incorporating like chlorophyll, wanting to get like that good green, so that it helps to regulate and rebalance and recalibrate my microbiome. That's vagus nerve and microbiome. Huge, huge, huge parts of needing to be rebalanced that don't get discussed in the Western medical professional world. And so if you see any information about those coming in at you and you have concern about this, check them out, research it. Also, I do have good references and resources and all this stuff. So if anybody's interested in this, just put something in the comments and I'll make sure to include information for you. Because I've gotten, over 2 years of research in on this. And as a person who's been able to heal from 10 different mold homes, and each time has gotten shorter. Like I've gotten my heal time down from anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. This last one took me 3 months because that's how bad and how many toxins were in their house, how many mycotoxins were in their house, how many molds were. This house was so disgusting, and it was a family member's house. It was disgusting. It should honestly be condemned and just torn down. It was so bad. Every single one of them has some sort of dis-ease, like celiacs or diabetes or inflammation that just won't stop in the body. And it's like, I wonder, you see all this black mold everywhere. That might be a reason that you maybe try to, pay attention to some of the things that I'm saying. But if you don't want to, great, don't listen and continue on your sick path. But I'm going to get out of this house now and start to heal my body because it was so bad that I could barely maintain. I've learned because of having to be in so many toxic mold homes that my body is starting to get to a place where it can handle higher levels now and not get so sick. Like it's like I'm building up an immune to it, which is good. I think that's part of my soul contract, because when I'm realizing being back in a state that has high levels of mold out in the air itself, so you don't get relief leaving your home, you actually get more sickness from just even being outside in this particular state. And I think that is something I don't think I know, speaking with my higher self, that's something that I am supposed to have, what's the word? Hold on. Anyways, this is something that I was supposed to have figured out, 4222 on the clock, confirmation, that I was supposed to have an understanding in and some wisdom in, so that if there are others that want assistance in this, that I'll be able to help. Because I now see this as, it's an epidemic. It's definitely what people are dealing with right now. Anybody that has a sickness, and I understand this now because I've been able to see this with my own eyes in multiple states now, and hearing similar things. And it's all a base of toxins. It's all a base of inflammation that everybody's dealing with. So adding in aloe is a good thing. But one of the things that I got from watching all my functional doctors that I was learning from was good supplemental products, that instead of taking 17 different supplements, I was able to find good powder forms from 2 different companies that I would highly recommend, because certain detox products are meant for metals, certain are meant for the glyphosate, certain are harder on our bodies, some are lighter and easier. And there's all this, there's so much to learn in this, that I was able to have a really appropriate understanding of what I needed and what would work best. Granted, all of our bodies are going to be different, but these 2 particular product lines I know are safe, I know are effective, because I am proof of that. I am proof of being able to use the product and seeing the results. So again, if I'm wanting any advice on any of those products, please pop notes in the comments and I'll be sure to send you that information, as I'm so more than happy to. There will be videos that I will be getting in more depth, but if you can't wait until they come out, yeah, just please let me know in the comments and I'll get you information on this. Another thing is I found out a good air reactor. There's one product on the market, literally one air purifier. It's called the air reactor. And it literally zaps out free radicals on contact and eradicates them by 99.9%. So somebody who is a sensitive, a mold sensitive, a toxin sensitive would be able to survive in a highly toxic environment with this machine in your house, because of the fact that it helps cleanse and purify the air in a really effective way that you can live in if you cannot move. And again, you want information on this, please let me know. I'll get you connected with the right information, as well as I do know the correct company to work with to do the mold testing. If you only want to do what's called a dust rag test, people, and anything else is not going to be accurate or precise. This one is. This particular company, Envirobiomics, I recommend them so much. They helped me with every single home that I had tested, and I was able to get the accurate results that were needed to be able to, because they break it down and they let you know the percentage. And each home that I always had tested had at least 3, if not more, toxic molds in it. And my body was able to figure this out within the first 2 weeks of each home. Okay. So I've gotten a little bit of what I was dealing with and what I got figured out in that first home. Like I say, I got myself in check the first time. It took me 5 months. Each additional time thereafter, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And then, like I mentioned, this last one was 3 months, but that should show you with how well I was able to figure things out for myself, how high level toxic this house was. It was bad. I mean, like, I'm honestly disgusted that a relative lives in this house and is allowing his kids to live in there. It's disgusting and just very inhumane. So that was house number 1. By house 2, I go into it, find out within the first 2 weeks that she has mold, found out that it was because of her washer that had an explosion in her basement. She had carpet and never had the carpet replaced, and just thought a cleaning would be good. And that's the thing is people think that they're doing the things to clean it up, but there's only a couple of things to clean it up, and usually it means you have to get rid of where the mold was, completely redo. And most people don't have the money to do that, so therefore won't go that route. Therefore, they're going to have the mold continuously being in their home. So the second home I end up having to leave, and these 10 homes, I averaged about 4 months each place before I figured it out and then had to make a move happen. Because again, I'm sick, just trying to get better, and then I get re-sick again and then have to move, and that's exhausting and it's expensive. And I'm trying to help 2 cats get better as well, right? So the second house, the woman was very judgmentally religious, and didn't come off this way because she wore a mask, obviously, because she was desperate to get people into her house because she just wanted the money, and didn't care what happens to anybody else. And, so very karmic. And this is where she calls me out as a witch. And this is where I find out that I have, potential ties in my ancestry, or in my ancestral history, to that type of lineage. And tell my online classmates, as well as my instructor, about this, who are all that as well. And so had said that was the universe speaking through her, trying to let you know that that's another area that you have superhero powers and some skills in. So but because she is and I'm not doing anything, negative, obviously not. If anything, I'm going to be on the good side of that. But because of one piece that I had in my room, because this woman ended up snooping in my room, and then a book that I had, she made a conclusion and decided that she wanted to not have me living there anymore because she thought that I was apparently like somebody that was gonna, I don't know. So I have to leave there. But again, there's mold, so I needed to leave anyways. So the third home is where there's, again, because that second house I didn't have the chance to test before I left, but the third home that I had to move into, you know what? I could kind of smell it. This was the first home though where I was like, oh, you know what? No. This was the fourth home, because the third home I went to, oh, I kind of knew it, but I wasn't used to smelling it right away. Well, this particular landlord, he had a major drug problem, is what I learned. And it was just bad energy on top of this really poorly taken care of rental that he had masked when I walked through, but then, and had promised that certain things were going to be fixed and prepared and repaired by the time I moved in, and they weren't. And then that smell really hit in after I moved in, and it was mold. So we get sick again, and I have to heal, and I have to heal my cats. And so the fourth home now is where my cats and me get crazy sick again. And this house had four out of the five top toxic molds in this house, again, using my same company I was working with. And to get the house tested, I, talked to the landlord. We had a good relationship, but usually when you have a conversation like this, these people don't want to hear this, because I said, it's not that I want to move, it's that I have to move if you don't get this fixed. So the choices you have are to have remediation done, which I get if you don't, because it's expensive, or you could get this air reactor so that I can continue living here. But I won't be able to pay for that, and it will be something that you'll have to pay for, and either you pay for it yourself or I'll just pay you for it. That's, pay it off. Or I have to move. And he tried to lie to me, make me think that I could stay for a minute. But he kept dragging his feet. And because I think he knew that he wasn't going to do any of this. And so he chooses to, and I showed him the test results, so he knew what he was doing. And I said to him, I'm like, this is irresponsible of you to be charging people to live in a place where you're making them sick. Him himself, he had hardcore respiratory issues where he's like coughing up blood, and it was like, come on, man, like, you figure it out. Like, I mean, you want to say you're spiritual, but you're not really, and this was my first exposure to, having a face-to-face with somebody who I thought was spiritual, and learning that just because somebody says they are doesn't mean that they're at any type of, doesn't mean that you need to be in their space. They could be at a different level than you are. And that's when I realized I was way more like, and I'm not saying this and I'm better than him, not at all. Like, I'm humbled by all of this, but this was just a moment where you're like, he's working from his ego. He's only a partially awakened, so was I, but I was coming from a place of, empathy, so, I watched my cats get really sick fast, and so was I. All of us got really sick really quickly within the first 2 weeks. Boom, we're like bedridden. And thankfully at that time, I was just had some of my last days at my seasonal job. So didn't have to go to work, and thank God, because I had no energy. I was so sick. And then I had to try to help my cats heal. And then what happened is both my cats ended up stroking out a month apart from each other, and I had to put them both down. And I had to learn how to grieve at that moment. 19 years of having them. And that was 19 years of having unconditional love from the only thing that I've experienced that length of love with. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I'd had a couple of years with like 3 other relationships. But I was too karmic at the time. Didn't realize it then, but looking back at it now, can say that to have been able to allow them to move past the 2 years that they had gone through. So I experience, so I'm sick. I'm trying to get over sick. I'm grieving the loss of my babies and the two entities that were there for me through everything and everything I had gone through. And it was devastating. I cried solid off the first cat's passing for 5 days straight and learned how to grieve off that one. And then when the second one passed 2 months later, I was able to, grieve in 3 days for her, where I was also able to understand that the energies were with me still, and that was part of their transition process as well. So I had to leave that house because he ended up, all these people that I'm renting from, these were relationships that were mirroring back at me things I still needed to release in myself, because they would start off good. And, granted, and a lot of these initial ones, I had to move so quickly. So I was kind of forced to just, even if I would have had like a little bit of a gut feeling, I didn't really have a choice. If I wanted to get out of one bad place and do another, it was like, well, what's the better of the two evils, And so you kind of just have to do what you have to do. And you're like, okay, well, I'm allowing the universe to guide me, through this. And with him, he allowed his thing that he taught me at that house was that the grieving process. He was there for me through that. So that's what I ended up receiving in that space. The previous one, she helped me learn about my witch heritage from previous, and the ancestry that I have around that aspect. And now so he was the fourth, she was the third. So now we're moving into my fifth house, which I end up diving into my spiritual awakening in this house. And that is what this person, because she ends up becoming a karmic relationship as well. And she ends up having radon in the house as well as mold. And the mold wasn't as bad, but the radon was really bad. And once you're sensitive to a toxin, you're sensitive to them all. And so this time, at least I didn't have my cats with me. And so I could just be solely focused on myself, and they're helping me from the spirit realm, right? And at first I was creating kind of like a bond with this spiritual person. But she was at, again, a different level. But she kind of introduces me to tarot a little bit more, and a little bit more of the spiritual community that she was part of. Plus, I was able to kind of expand in other areas for myself, and really connect more with Mother Earth at that time. But again, within a matter of 4 months, I'm moving again to my sixth house with another person who is supposed to be spiritual. I have to leave this mountain space that I was, feeling refuge from being down in the city where that gang stalking was occurring, and away from there. So this is now I'm having to go back down into the city where I'm now getting triggered a little bit by being back down by so many people. And then find out again that this girl is wearing a mask and not being her authentic self. And I find out, again, after a couple of months, that I need to leave. Thankfully, I realized this because we were just about ready to rent and to go into signing a lease on something together. And I caught it in the nick of time. Now I end up moving into my seventh house with this older man in his 70s. And again, this was another extreme mold house. And the second time I went over there, I did smell the mold. But now I kind of recognized it. But again, I was having to move so quickly that it was like, you know what? I'll just be aware right away. We can make the move happen. And then I'll have to just figure out a plan from there, And so this is the seventh house. Again, I'm there. I think this one I was only there 3 months before I moved, maybe even 2 months, into the eighth mold house in the state that I was in, where I initially went out to start my healing journey. And this was the first house where I was now with a bunch of roommates, and they were all younger than me. And he ends up also having a mold problem. He knew about it. I tried to warn him about it. I asked him if he had any water issues. He said no at first, but then one of the roommates told me, yeah, there was down where you stay, because I was in his basement, one of the rooms in the basement, that, yeah, there was a huge, like weeks before I moved in, that there was an explosion of water. They had a big explosion of water in the basement, like really like a lot of water on the floor, and didn't really do the proper, drying out remediation. So one of the ways that I can recognize if mold is in a house is my right eye. That's one of my histamine indicators. It'll start to water instantly. Other signs will be, I'll get, the brain fog and the confusion. It'll feel like I'm kind of getting like tight chested. My stomach will start to tighten up, and these are all my signs now. And you learn to pay attention to that, because it's your body trying to warn you, like, warning, 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 this is toxic, run, go the opposite direction, right? And so the 8th house I stayed in for about 5 months. I stayed there until what is going to be hopefully my last video that I will explain, which is the betrayal that I come into of my family. And I don't know that it's going to be like this. I don't know that my family is at all what I find out they are when this part starts. So I'll just quickly give you the brief on where we're going to be hopping into next, and why I leave this house and this state is because October 16th, the night of, going into the morning of October 17th, I have a dream. And the dream is my dad coming to me in my dream, which I'd never dreamt about my dad ever, nor had I ever had a dream with him, for sure, being very loving. And the whole space with him and me in there, it's like he was sitting on a chair like I'm sitting right now, and I was like sitting on the ground next to him with my arm up on his leg. And we'd never done anything like that. I had never gotten like that close with him. I wish I could have had something like that. And I just remember it being just peaceful and loving, which I had never experienced with my dad. It was always very volatile and angry and abusive and screaming in my face, and him yelling and bullying me and just, stomping me, kicking me while I'm down, sort of thing. So I was like, wow, cool dream, right? And he was speaking to me in my dream, but I don't remember what he was saying, or I couldn't hear it in the dream. Next thing I know is I'm waking up and I'm bawling, and I wake up going, oh my God, I have to reach out to my family. At this point, this would have been about 8-9 years that I hadn't spoken to my family. And so I had been trying to get myself healed enough so that I could be strong enough to come back into them and say, hey, I'm in a healed space where I've learned to love myself, and I want to, share this love with you guys in the way that I never received it from you guys. And also, if you guys want to heal, I got a lot of tricks, and I can help everybody with everything that they're dealing with right now. And but if you don't, that's okay too. And I will be okay with that. And that is what I was trying to make myself strong enough for, was to be okay with the fact if they didn't want that. And for me not to care what, because my whole life for 40 years was I did everything that my dad wanted me to do or my mom wanted me to do, but nothing that I wanted to do, and that was one of the reasons I was numbing out, because I wasn't my authentic self. I was the person my mom and dad wanted me to be, which was nothing at all who I wanted to be. So that dream happens. It takes me 2 days till October 19th, 2024. I finally reach out to my brother, then my mom. Well, my brother, my sister, and then my mom, after my brother gave me my mom's number. Because during the gang stalking and the con man time, they had actually taken my contact book out of my phone, and the only number I had known was my sister's. But I wasn't sure about her, and that's in a previous video, because I tried reaching out to her a couple years previous, and had a really weird conversation with her that I didn't know if it was her or somebody impersonating her from the people who had gang stalked me, because I knew that they were doing this about me to other people, that they were impersonating me to other people that I knew. And so I reached my brother. My brother, for the first time, tells me that my dad had passed 2 years previous, that my mom wasn't handling it well at all. In fact, the first year was, started drinking really hard and has continued that and was just a hot mess. And then, but had also met this boyfriend down in the States. She was doing the snowbird thing. And that nobody really liked him and was very unsure about him. And then get a chance and then I finally speak to my mom, and she's acting like she misses me and wants me around, which is what I was assuming it was, because like I didn't do anything to any of them. It was what they had done to me during the time when I had initially broke off the communication by them not telling me that my grandpa had passed until 2 weeks after the funeral. This was after years and years of trying to get my mom and dad to support me in my healing process, but they were only taking me 10 steps back. So that was just a recap on why there was this time period that I hadn't spoken to them and why I had to kind of build up the courage to, plus it was, how do you tell this long story? As you guys, if you followed me at all, you know that this story takes a long time. So it was, how do I speak about this to them? So my mom says, I asked my mom, hey, mom, I'm so like, I really need some downtime to try to finish healing my body physically from all this mold exposure and everything. Can I move back home and have your emotional support? And then just, be able to live at home without having to pay any rent and having to worry about bills just for a couple of months so I can heal and finish my creative endeavors that I had started, like my writings and my other projects that I had been wanting to work on regarding my business. And my mom had decided, of course, you can move back to your home, which was my childhood home. And she goes, but why don't you do this? Why don't you come down to the state where I'm at? And you can stay with me and her boyfriend, for the 6 months that we're here. And then we'll all drive back, we can all, live in the fifth wheel. And, at first I hesitated, not because of being around my mom. In fact, that was a bonus. That was a pro to that, a positive was, cool, I can hang around with my mom, because in my mind from my past, I had always had a pretty good relationship with her, definitely better than anything I had with my dad. So that was exciting, like knowing, yay, I can like reunite with my mom in a way that I can have one-on-one time with her. Cool. I can also help her try to grieve while I grieve my dad's death, since I'm just finding out about this now, and since it sounds like she's been stuffing it down with drinking and re-picked up smoking or just continued smoking, but was doing it at a much more increased level. Then the other concern was this man, because my mom had gotten an inheritance from my grandparents passing, her mom and dad. And my concern was maybe that was the urgency that my dad was speaking to me about in my dream, was I needed to get back there to help my mom to see if this guy was going to be trying to do to her what this con man was doing to me. So it takes me a couple weeks before I make that decision, but I finally do make that decision, and I decide that I'm going to do it. I had some reservation, and that was my gut. And I think, because looking back at it, I'm like, God, maybe, my gut was trying to kind of say, no, you shouldn't. But at the same time, had I not gone and seen and experienced what I experienced, I would not be at the position that I'm at right now, which is, even though it's been really motherfucking hard this whole year so far, it has been a necessary tower moment that had to happen. I had to see what I had to see, because I was completely blinded by who my family was because of how they raised me. You don't ask questions. You never ask questions. You would get slapped, spanked, physically abused, verbally abused, mentally abused, if you tried to ask questions about things that didn't make sense. And that is where my brain comes from, is I want to make sense. I want to problem solve everything. So that was a reason I got put as the black sheep. And because it's not that I was ever doing anything wrong. I was always, I was always on my best behavior because I never wanted to get in trouble and never wanted to disappoint my dad, because the wrath would come and you learned quickly you didn't want that wrath. So you learned to be really good. And so it was December 2nd that I finally left that state because I did decide to go down there and be with my mom. And I thought it was, and I thought, oh, it'll give me time to, get back into my writing and just after I'm healing and because when you're in that state of unhealed and survival, you don't have time to allow your creative mind to try to come back online, especially when it's been offline your whole life and you're trying to learn how to put it online to begin with, So it was December 2nd. That is the first time I went to see my mom, met her boyfriend. And again, this is my mom getting with this guy a year after my dad had passed, and they had been together as old as I am. So at that time, I guess my dad would have been 40, or they would have been married about 45 years at the time, 44, 45. And so the next videos are going to be about my experience reuniting with my mom and my family. And this is where I find out the true narcissistic, karmic, dysfunctionally toxic, emotionally immature family that I am part of. Soap opera is going to be a term that'll come to mind. After school special. The Deliverance, the movie. These are some ideas of what you have, what's to come in my future videos here, because it blew my fucking mind is what happened. Basically, I was so unaware of the family. I just blinded myself my whole entire lifetime of this family. Probably intentionally for survival mode, but also because out of fear, fear going then which becomes survival mode, because again, I wasn't allowed to ask questions when things didn't make sense. I got very much abused, very, very extreme. And so I am looking forward to being able to finish my timeline with explaining that last part of this. But after I do complete the timeline, I am going to be able to get into breaking down some really helpful advice and seeds to plant for those of you who have dealt with, mold and mycotoxin exposure, just chronic illness, autoimmune diseases. I am very much an intuitive holistic teacher, very much so, because I have been able to heal my body and do things intuitively that I watch other people struggle with. And when I go try to help somebody who's unawakened, you get a lot of pushback because they don't want to see in themselves these things, because then they have to do something about it. And not everybody has the strength to do this type of healing work. It is for the awakened ones that have that prerequisite of super passionate dedication to knowing that there is unconditional love out there that exists that they have not experienced, but they are gonna not stop until they achieve it. And that is where I am heading. And if you are heading there, please comment below and let me know if this video has resonated with you, or if you have any questions, if you are interested in wanting any of the information that I spoke about. I am so excited to be able to help people in this area because it is something that I have dedicated my life to and still do to this day, and currently helping people as we speak in my real life job even. And this is one of the reasons I'm really excited about speaking out to the public right now, because this is an area that a lot of us don't know about. And I have been able to find this out from speaking face to face with people and them hearing how I have healed, and then giving them advice, and then watching their health improve, and them, coming back and being like, thank you so much for that advice. And this is how I know that the universe definitely wants me and my higher self wants me speaking out regarding this part of it for sure, but I know the other parts as well. So anyways, I'll stop talking now because I know I'm babbling, and I just want to thank anyone who has listened to this point. I'm very humbled. I'm going to get a little emotional because this was the part of my journey that was really hard. And as anybody knows, when you're physically sick and you don't have your physical self to be able to get yourself around, when you're doing this all by yourself, it really makes moving forward and living hard, right? And because I was losing so much during this process and lost, lost in physical form, the two loves of my life, in a way that I had to learn how to reconnect with them just in that same sense. There was just so much happening, and it was, I'm sure seeing it from the spirit realm, they were sitting there probably cheering me along going, woo! Keep going. But for me, how it felt was, God damn it, this is really fucking hard. How am I getting through this? And then, having a moment like that, and then just, digging down deep and going, okay, what is it that I have to do? And that's where I call transmuting your fear or your pain into healing. And I have intuitively learned how to master this for myself, and definitely know how to help others in this as well. I feel this more in others more easily than myself, and I'm really learning how to do it for myself in a way, because I'm learning how to feel my own energies now too. So I hope this has helped somebody. It was just 01144 on the clock, so this is confirmation, and I'm sending you all so much gratitude, so much love. Thank you so much for watching, and again, feel free to comment with your own stories to give others the opportunity to know that they're not alone, and that there are more than one of us out there with similar types of stories, maybe not the same context, but similar types of stories occurring. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in hopefully the last timeline video of my timeline.